I was around 12 years old at the time, and one of my best friends, let's call him Alex, must have been 10. Alex's father had purchased a large amount of forested land around 100 kilometers away from the city we lived in, Montreal, Canada. It was all forest when Alex's family acquired it. They cleared a little patch to build a house, and the rest was pure, unadulterated forest. Their land was cut in two by a dirt road that, if you followed it for several kilometers, led to a few houses. And their land was very different depending on which side of the dirt road you looked. On the right side where their house was, the forest was light and luminous, or at least it felt that way. It was not too dense, with little rolling hills. A lovely place to play. On the left side of the road, though, it was another story. First, there was a deep ditch, perhaps 2 meters deep, which then became a quite high and steep hill. Weirdly enough, all along the long road, the ditch was full of car parts. A set of car wheels here, a door there, a steering wheel way over there, all old and overgrown with moss. And over the steep hill, the forest gave off a really bad vibe. It had lots of very tall, dark coniferous trees with almost black trunks, and the place seemed somehow devoid of light or life. Climbing the hill, which we seldom were willing to do because of the creeps it gave us, there was some sort of swamp there. When we were there was this strange pressure. We sensed a kind of animal instinct that told us to leave this place. The strange atmosphere was spontaneously obvious to both me and Alex, and we playfully called that side of the road Demon's Forest. One weekend day, probably in 2001 or 2002, my family and I came to visit Alex's family. Bored by the adults, my friend and I decided to go and play in the forest. Alex's father told us to watch out. There was an animal that had been rummaging in their trash bin and causing other nuisances. He said it was a dog that looked somewhat like a Rottweiler that surely belonged to someone living up the dirt road. He warned us that we shouldn't interact with the dog if we saw it, as it didn't look healthy, as far as he could tell, or something was weird about it. He said it somehow looked diseased or contagious, or had patches of fur missing, can't remember exactly. And so we set out on our walk. It was autumn, and the leaves were pretty and golden, many having already fallen to the ground. It was a calm, slightly overcast, windless day. The air was very still and calm. Alex and I decided to walk along the dirt road, with the pleasant section of the forest to our right and Demon's Forest to our left. We chatted while following the road as it was rising up a slope. As usual, we were slightly creeped out going up the road because of the weird vibes of the forest to the left side. But we were challenging ourselves to be brave and trying to not really think about how unsettling it felt. A good distance away from their home, when it was already well out of sight, I noticed the first strange thing of the day. Out of the steep hill on left side of the road, there was a very large and dark pine tree hanging over the road. Somebody had attached a pink ribbon to one of the branches, which was already strange since this was the territory of Alex's family, and they had no daughters or other little girls likely to hang around, or other people who may be owners of pink ribbons who were likely to hang out on this deserted road. The strange thing was, the ribbon was flailing strongly in the wind. Its loose ends were flapping almost horizontally. The thing is, it was a completely windless day. Almost horizontally. The thing is, it was a completely windless day. There was no wind to speak of. The ribbon was within my reach, so I even touched it as it was flailing. I even licked my finger and held it in the air to check if I could feel any wind or air current at all, as my dad had taught me. The air was perfectly still, yet the ribbon failed. I mentioned it to my friend. He seemed distracted and was younger than me and sometimes didn't catch on to what I said, so I didn't press the matter. We continued our climb. We reached a place where the hill on the left side of the road had a gentler slope and began the matter. We continued our climb. We reached a place where the hill on the left side of the road had a gentler slope and began further away from the road. In fact, it looked as if the hill was kind of carved out in a way that would have made it easy for us to climb to get into Demon's Forest. It almost seemed as if the hill was carved in a sloping half circle, like in a theater, and the road we stood on would have been the stage. It gave us a very clear treeless view of the hillside, full of golden and red fallen leaves. The trees began at the top of the hill, maybe 9 meters higher. We stopped to admire the view. Canadian autumns are a sight to behold. Alex suddenly got really excited. He thought he heard something in the Demon Woods up the hill, and he really wanted me to pay attention. He explained that there are wild cats in that forest. They had spotted them with his dad. One of them had reportedly had kittens being one of the most exciting things in the world for kids our age, getting us all riled up. But somehow my hackles were up and I could really relax, even thinking about adorable wild kittens. He actually thought he had heard the cat meow in the forest up the hill close by. I heard nothing of the sort and thought he was inventing it. He vehemently suggested that we try meowing at it to see if it would respond. Maybe it would even bring its kittens along and we could see them and play with them, he said. I hadn't heard any sounds at all and didn't really like his idea of screaming meows into the creepy forest. What kind of wild cat would respond to human children anyway? Wouldn't it be obvious that we are not cats by the sound of us? That seemed like a dumb idea to me. Before I could try to talk him out of it, he loudly meowed into the forest. To my utter shock, the forest meowed back. Alex was delighted. He meowed again. Something in the forest answered again. I was actually shocked. This didn't make sense to me, and it creeped me out, but I suspended my disbelief to see what would happen. He kept doing meowing over and over. For every one of his meows, there was one coming back in response from the woods. Something felt off to me. Feral or wild animals didn't behave that way. Even at 12 years old, I realized that. And it wasn't an echo. The cat did not bounce back any sound that we threw at it except meows, which it reciprocated immediately. And anyway, there were no hard rocky surfaces around off of which sound could bounce off. Everything was covered in a soft layer of sound-dulling leaves. Alex got even more excited. Listen, the cat is coming towards us. She's coming to see us with her kittens. To my surprise, he was right. There was a rustle of dead leaves coming from above us, from above the slope in the creepy forest. It seemed like the rustling was getting closer to us, but it was way off, because cats are small and light and careful with their steps. They don't make a ruckus when they walk through the woods. But here, the rustling leaf sound was extremely obvious, along with the meowing, and in fact, it sounded more like steps, like someone with 2 legs walking in the leaves. And it was getting closer to us. My alarm signals were starting to go off with the wrongness of it all, while my younger friend was oblivious. He was calling it more vehemently, noticing that it was coming towards us. Then I realized what seemed so wrong. The sound was coming towards us, but there was nothing to be seen. Right in front of us, we had the gently sloping hill, treeless and clearly visible. Anything coming from the forest should have been plainly exposed to view. There was nothing. No source for the rustling sound, nothing moving. Oh, her kittens are joining her. Listen, there are more sounds. They're coming to play with us. He was right. The walking sound seemed to have multiplied and now came from various directions at once, ever getting closer with nothing being visible. Something was way off. I wanted to leave, but Alex was getting mad at me. The kittens were almost here and he wanted to see them, he insisted. At this point was extremely tense, and fight or flight was activating from the wrongness of it all. We were alone and quite exposed on this theater stage too. Whatever was getting closer to us, which was, more and more obviously with every moment, decidedly not kittens. I was on the verge to force him go run home, and then suddenly I heard a very loud panting sound, right at my feet. During the first millisecond, I got only mildly surprised. We had a huge husky at home. I was used to it panting next to my feet, but then a sense of profound dread dawned on me as I realized that, obviously, my dog was not here, and it must be another dog, a very big one by the sound of it. Right at my feet, I panickingly looked down, ready to jump away from the dog that somehow got extremely close to me, almost on me, without my noticing. Only there is absolutely nothing at my feet. I still hear the loud, breathy panting sound coming from there. I whirl around, all 360 degrees, screaming. Where is it coming from? There is nothing at my feet or anywhere around me. There is nothing there, yet the sound is clearly there. As I whirl about in a frenzy, I look up the dirt road we were following. Around 100 meters away, of the top of the slope, I see a lone dog standing. It looks somewhat similar to a Rottweiler, but in very, very bad shape, extremely unkempt, with patches of fur missing, shaggy and dirty as heck, with some skin exposed where the fur is missing. It looks down at us too. Obviously, there is no way that I could hear it panting at that distance, and the source of the sound is at my feet. At that point, the flight instinct wins inside me. I have never run as desperately and as fast in my whole life. Thank goodness it was all downhill. Alex kept pace right beside me, terrified. We made it home in one piece. We didn't walk in these woods anymore. I came back to Alex's place several times in my life. I never wanted to walk in the woods again. We had amazing parties at his house as teens. I was often there rather drunk and having a great time, but I always had this very stressful sensation when I went out of his house, especially at night. When I slept over there, I had these extremely strange experiences where when I woke up I sensed as if something was there and was observing me. In my mid-awake state, I even saw something floating near the ceiling. It had the sensation that it was not an immediate threat, though it was observing. I am not sure that whatever this is was related to what happened on the dirt road. We never discussed what happened that day. As I researched it now, I see that this land is historically Algonquin land, though one source seemed to say Mohawk,